Associate Professor Jamus Lim.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I more than welcome the proposed amendments to the Child Development Co-Savings Act. Many of the proposed changes extend support for those who are either enduring an incalculable loss or taking enormous responsibility as they undertake sacrifices to secure the next generation. As a society, we should absolutely help them in any way we can. I will speak today about the importance of helping the dejected, the downtrodden, and the disaffected, parents of stillborn children, parents who have adopted children, and working women in a precarious position due to pregnancy. Madam Deputy Speaker, in 1989, my mother became unexpectedly pregnant. At the time, I was 13, and my sister 6. Since our family was of modest means, my mother had to contribute to the household with a full-time job, which meant that she encountered all the challenges that working mothers face when they are working and carrying a child at the same time. Moreover, it was a difficult pregnancy because Mom was already more advanced in her years. In the final months, I recall how she had to sleep upright on many nights due to the discomfort. But we took the fact that since the expected birth would occur exactly 7 years apart from my sister's and 14 after mine, 7 being the perfect number, as a sign that my brother's conception was a gift from God. But his birth was not to be. In the early hours of May 6th, I awoke to my father's presence in my bedroom. He had tears in his eyes, one of only 3 times in my life where I had seen him cry. "We lost Jaren," he said. My brother had been stillborn. The sign of the 7 had not been that perfect, after all. It took my mother at least that many years to recover from that loss. Along the way, she questioned her choices, her faith, and herself. That is why amendments such as that documented in Clause 9A of the bill are so important. There is no difference between the physiological trauma endured by the mother of a healthy versus stillborn child. Consequently, I believe that we should not exempt the latter from any of the benefits of rest and recovery that government-mandated maternity leave confers. If anything, the added psychological trauma that the latter will experience may even be the cause for being willing to think about extending even longer maternity leave periods for such individuals. Studies suggest that a leave period of 12 weeks post-delivery will positively affect vitality, while 15 weeks yields positive effects on mental health and 20 weeks on role function. Since the norm in Singapore is either 12 weeks of maternity leave or 16 weeks of government-paid maternity leave, it would not be unreasonable to allow for a longer leave period for those that have to recover from not just physical but also mental wounds. As I shared earlier, the loss of my brother was one of only 3 occasions where I had seen my father cry. He was a traditional man and not given to public expression of his emotions. But the fact that he mourned the loss of my brother is indicative of the sort of pain and anguish that fathers also go through when they experience the loss of a child. Consequently, it would make eminent sense for compassionate leave to be extended for the father in the case of a stillborn child, too. May I therefore clarify, in the extension of shared leave benefits from Section 12E5 of the original Act, that these would be applicable in this instance as well. At this point, Madam Deputy Speaker, I will return to the example of my mother. I seem to be talking a lot about my mother. It's something that she would undoubtedly find great delight in, and I see this as simply payback, since she never seems to tire about talking about her children. As it turns out, my mother was also adopted as a child. This made an immense difference to her life, especially since my grandfather passed when she was still a very young girl. And the fact that my mother was but one of 10 children meant that it was impossible for my grandmother to have raised her on her own. Adoption confers a lease of life for such children. Adoption is a gift of parenthood for those who might, for various reasons, be unable to have biological children of their own. As every forever parent knows, there is absolutely no distinction between being a parent to a biological or an adoptive child. Indeed, our latest demographic trends suggest that adoption may become ever more prevalent, given how the median age of female marriages continues to drift higher. It was 28.8 years in 2020, almost a year more than a decade ago. All while our nation's total fertility rate continues to decline. It stood at 1.1 per female in 2020. Clause 13 is therefore a wholly welcome recognition of this reality. However, I should point out that the language in which the amendments are embedded, that the adoption benefits apply to eligible mothers, automatically vests these benefits onto the adoptive mother. Even the proposed addition of Section 12A(4)(b) does not fully offset this implicit bias, since it still requires the mother to elect to share these benefits, in accordance to Section 12E(5) of the original Act, with the father. Moreover, while uncommon, the Adoption of Children Act does allow single men to adopt children, just not girls, except under very special circumstances. If so, fathers might be inadvertently excluded by the benefits outlined in Section 12A. It strikes me as far more reasonable to couch the language in terms of the primary caregiver, whether it be male or female, in order to preclude the possibility that male forever parents find themselves ineligible for benefits simply by dint of their gender. Clause 8E of the bill introduces amendments to Section 9A of the Act that are designed to protect working mothers. This House will inevitably return to this theme as we debate the gender equality motion tomorrow. Here I will limit my comments to underscoring how important it is to protect female employees that become pregnant. Too often, we hear stories from our female friends and residents about how they are burdened by an immense sense of insecurity after they turn pregnant. While outright dismissals purely on the grounds of pregnancy alone are exceedingly rare, not least because they would be deemed wrongful, pregnant women nevertheless often feel under immense pressure or scrutiny over their workplace performance. In such egregious cases, however, unscrupulous employers may advance a case based on structural reasons to release a pregnant employee. While it is very difficult for an external party to perfectly adjudicate the validity of such justifications per se, the fallback of government-provided maternity benefits is surely welcome as an additional safety net. On a parting note, I would like to touch just very briefly on the issue of returns on savings on the child development accounts. Here, my concern is one of omission rather than commission. There were notably no amendments proposed to the CDCA pertaining to returns on CDAs. Indeed, beyond a brief allusion to returns on CDAs in the original co-saving scheme, which states that it seeks to facilitate, and I quote, to facilitate the making of financial provision for the development of a child through the making of contributions to the child's bank account. In Section 3 of the original Act, along with some notion of protection of benefits in Section 5, there is remarkably little guidance on returns. Hence, while the CDAs do receive a number of government grant injections and dollar-for-dollar matches, the incentives to further contribute to co-saving into the account, an aspiration embedded right in the name of the Act, is hardly encouraged. As members of this House, will undoubtedly be aware, the closest we have to magic in the world of finance is the power of compound interest. Yet the casual inspection of available CDA accounts offered by the major banks reveals that returns amount to only at most 2% a year. This is notable, especially in contrast to risk-free interest on the other major government savings scheme, CPF, where there is a legislated mandatory minimum of 2.5% on the ordinary account and significantly higher for other accounts. One is left to wonder why the CDAs do not enjoy the same legislative protections that CPF offers to its members. Notwithstanding these additional remarks, Madam Deputy Speaker, I support the bill.